mommies, welcome back for yoga modifications for your second trimester. If you have not watched the modifications for the first trimester, please pause, go back and watch those first because all of those still are very applicable, including, not to be awkward, but telling your teacher. I've had students come in before, new to me, and I've been like, are they pregnant? Are they not pregnant? Sometimes in that second trimester, it's really hard to tell. Every woman carries it a little bit differently, and it's very awkward as a teacher to ask someone if they're pregnant. And you hope that, they are pregnant, and if they're not, then you look like a jerk. So do still tell your teacher if you're pregnant, even if you feel like it's super obvious to you and to the rest of the world, just to save them that maybe awkward, like, should I ask, should I not ask conversation. So go ahead and watch the first trimester modifications if you haven't already. All of those still apply, so be sure to be mindful of those, and then these are just extra on top of that. I know that sounds daunting, but I've actually had pregnant students tell me that the second trimester is kind of like the honeymoon phase of practicing yoga while you're pregnant, because you're over the morning sickness. If you had morning sickness, you feel a little bit more comfortable with being pregnant in general, and you can really adapt it to your practice more. So hopefully that's your experience. And the modifications, not that tough. A lot of them are super common sense. So in your second trimester, usually where you have feet together poses, like mountain pose, with the arms up, or chair pose where feet are together and you're sitting low, anything where feet are together or you hear your teacher cue feet together, usually a good idea to widen your stance a little bit. Have your feet about hip width distance apart. It's going to just be a little bit more comfortable on your hips and your pelvis. Also, as I mentioned in the first trimester video, a lot of times balance becomes an issue because, hello, your whole center of gravity is changing because you have this growing human being inside you. So some days your body just feels a little less balanced because it's trying to get used to things. So having feet wider apart, about hip width distance apart, is a good rule of thumb instead of having feet together. And a lot of women overestimate hip width distance apart. I'll say hip width distance apart, and you've got women who are like this. If that's just more comfortable for you, that's fine, but that's way wider than your hips are. So it's about 2 fist widths distance in between your feet is about hip width distance apart. And if there's a mirror in your class or at your home practice, it's easier to look in the mirror and see that. So feet hip width distance, number 1. As your belly starts to get bigger, you're going to notice that your back starts to get kind of extra arched just naturally, more than its natural arch, because again, you've got a whole different center of gravity and you've got this extra person in front of you. So think about drawing the backs of your rib cage back behind you. So you don't want to, hunch down, like, over exaggerate it, but just energetically think about pulling your spine more into alignment. So the cue that I would use for non-pregnant women would be to niche your lower ribs in. When you are pregnant, that reference point kind of goes away because your lower ribs are covered by a pregnant belly. So, but if you can just energetically kind of imagine that action of knitting your lower ribs into center, that'll kind of help reduce some of that extra overarchedness in your back, if that makes sense. Other modifications that you'll want to take during your second trimester, and these are modifications you can do in any yoga class, again, as long as it's not heated. But if you want to just do a yoga DVD or go to a normal yoga class because it suits your schedule better, you can use these modifications during these classes. So normally, you've got a wide warrior 2 stance. You'll probably want to shorten all of your warrior stances, whether it's warrior 2, reverse warrior, extended side angle, crescent lunge. You'll probably want to take a little bit shorter stances in all those poses, just to alleviate some pressure from your pelvic floor. Again, your body is changing a lot. As the baby grows, you're going to feel a little bit more pressure in that area, and there's no sense in exaggerating that and making you uncomfortable. So feet a little bit closer together in those warrior stances and those standing poses. Some really nice additions in your second trimester are going to be heart-opening poses. Again, since you've got this extra weight on your front side body through your belly and through your breasts, you're going to want to open up that region to avoid feeling, you know, all this pressure in your shoulders and in your chest and your heart. So some good poses to add for that. And these are things you can add, you know, if your teacher cues mountain pose, maybe take cow face arms. So interlacing your hands behind your back, reaching for opposite. If you can't reach, just placing your hands or using a towel. That'll help open up your chest, lengthen through that area if you're hunching forward because of that additional weight through the front side of your body. Another nice one I like to do, even though I'm not pregnant, is reverse prayer hands. So bringing your hands to prayer down the back of your back. It's a really nice heart opener, and it'll help stretch through your shoulders and your chest. As far as other modifications go, chaturanga starts to get a little complicated when your belly gets bigger, obviously. So depending on how you're feeling and how you're relating to the earth underneath you, at some point up dog, you're going to be here in chaturanga. That might be hard at some point because your belly might touch the floor, especially up dog. You don't have too much space in between your belly and the floor. So as a substitute for doing chaturanga and up dog, I like to recommend holding your plank. You can hold your plank either, you know, normal plank, you can come down to your knees, hold it here. You can do a forearm plank. That's not going to be as easy during your flow, but if you're going through a slow flow and you want to hold the forearm plank chaturanga, during chaturanga, otherwise holding just the plank or plank on your knees during chaturanga and then pushing back to downward facing dog. In the first trimester video, we talked about twisting. So doing those just open twists. As your belly gets bigger, again, you're going to have that issue of running into your leg with your belly. So as opposed to taking open twists the same direction as everybody else is going, you can do an open twist in the opposite direction everyone else is going. So it might be a little bit awkward because everybody's going to be facing you and you're going to be facing the other way, but that's okay. Again, you just want to do what's stable for your body and what's going to be comfortable for your pregnant belly. Again, no core as far as crunching goes. You can see the first trimester video for modifications on that. Belly down spine, like cobra and locust, where your belly is on the mat, obviously not going to be possible at a certain point because your belly is going to be big. So as opposed to doing those things, your teacher can either offer you alternatives or, again, like I mentioned in the first trimester video, maybe just a light camel or a bridge pose. And supported bridge is really good for that too, which let's get into that. We'll get into blocks. So during your second trimester, you're always going to have blocks handy when you practice. Most studios have blocks that you can borrow and use during class. If not, invest in a pair, they will be worth it. So supported bridge, like I just mentioned, it's nice for spine. Also, if you are a mommy who wants to do inversions during your practice while you're pregnant, supported bridge is a great way to invert without, you know, doing something like a handstand. So you can take your block, lift your hips up like bridge, and then you're going to place your block right on your sacrum. So that bony part above your tailbone. And you're just going to rest that there. It should be comfortable. You can put your hands down by your side and just relax a little bit. Again, like I mentioned in the first trimester video, no inverting for more than 30 seconds. So just stay here for a few rounds of breath or however long you're comfortable. Also gaze straight up. I'm looking that way to look at the camera. You don't want to be looking around to protect your neck. So looking straight up and then just slipping that block out from underneath you. If you want a little bit more inversion, and it's comfortable for you, while you're in supported bridge, you can move up to supported shoulder stand. So you can start to lift your feet up, which might feel really nice. A lot of mommies experience leg swelling, or swelling of their feet or ankles. So it's kind of nice to have your legs up for a moment. But again, don't stay inverted for more than 30 seconds. Just stay for a few rounds of breath and then slowly lower down when you're ready. Blocks are going to be super handy for a lot of things. So depending on how your teacher likes to start class, a lot of teachers start class in child's pose. Again, once the belly starts to get bigger, not the most successful pose, right? So, and a lot of times sitting flat on the ground doesn't feel best for moms either. So you can take a block and you can put it in between your feet. Feet are a little bit wider than hip width distance apart to accommodate that block. And you can sit on your block in hero's pose. So that's a great substitute for child's pose at the beginning of class, or shavasana at the end of class if you're not comfortable laying down on your side for a long period of time, which a lot of moms aren't. You can sit like this in hero on the block, and that's a really good substitute. Another good use for blocks, there are tons, is during your flow. So again, because balance can be an issue, you'll have your feet hip width distance apart, which is great. But because of that extra weight on the front side of your body, sometimes it's hard to really lengthen through the spine. We tend to collapse, see mommies collapse instead, which is not the goal. So for halfway lift, having your blocks handy at the front, you can really press into those blocks to get that long flat spine and have that support. And then when you're ready to forward fold, maybe even move them back with you and have them there to get a little bit more traction to fold a little bit. And I know it's going to be hard to fold with your belly, but just again, having those blocks there for support will make it a little bit easier to get some depth. Another great use for your blocks is during extended side angle or triangle pose. You can have that block there on your inner thigh or your inner foot, excuse me, for extended side angle or for triangle for support. Another thing I like to offer for mommies to be for extended side angle, if you're comfortable with it, is putting that forearm on your inner thigh and resting your hand on your belly, like right under your belly to support it. It's just a really nice way, I think, to connect with the baby while you're practicing, and it's a great support just for your physical body as well. Another pose prime for blocks is going to be prasarita. So again, because the tendency is with the extra weight, your different center of gravity, a lot of times tend to collapse or sag. Having these blocks here in prasarita, wide-legged forward fold, will allow you to pull your heart forward, crown of your head forward, really lengthen through your back and get long, which is the goal here. And then shifting the weight into the balls of your feet, remembering to keep a slight bend to your knees to avoid hyperextending those joints. Again, that relaxin', that extra flexibility stuff, right? And then coming back up to standing. Pigeon, another good pose for blocks. And pigeon may be something that you're not super comfortable doing while you're pregnant, but a lot of my pregnant students really enjoy the hip release because you've got so much going on in that region. But again, because of folding forward, as your belly gets bigger, that's not going to be quite as possible. So having the blocks handy at the front of your mat, and you can use your blocks to lower down and support you as far as your belly will accommodate, and you're still getting that hip opening. Those are the most helpful things I can think of for blocks during second trimester, but anytime you want to use your blocks, use them. They are not a crutch, they are a support. I mean, I use blocks in my practice just because I enjoy them. So don't feel like you're doing any less of your yoga practice than anyone else just because you're utilizing the blocks. They're there to help you. Speaking of helping you, because balance is a little bit tricky, the more pregnant you get, because your center of gravity is changing so fast and so much, I suggest setting up your mat next to a wall if you go to a class or even if you're practicing at home. Practicing near a wall if you're going to be practicing any balance postures. So that way, if you're in tree pose and you start to kind of topple out of your tree, you have a wall there to catch you and support you. So setting up near a wall, and if you need to, face the back of the room when everybody else, so that you have the correct side supported, do what you need to do. It's your practice, it's your space. Don't worry about looking silly or facing the wrong way. Accommodate yourself, keep you and your baby safe. I'm trying to think, shavasana. That's another popular thing as far as modifying during pregnancy. Some mommies just do not feel comfortable lying down on their sides for lengthy periods of time in a yoga practice. You do not want to be laying on your back for Shavasana. So if you are laying down, lay on your left side, not your right side, for circulation reasons. And then you can also bring a block in between your inner thighs to have a little bit more support there, or your knees, just depending on what feels good for you, if that feels good for you. Also, no need to use a block if you don't want to. If you're at home and you have pillows or bolsters or blankets, or if your yoga studio has that, awesome, use it. If laying on your side, not the most comfortable option for you, again, seated in hero with that block between your heels, and just have a little seated meditation to finish your class. So those are just some ways to modify for your second trimester if you wanted to take a regular yoga class that's not a prenatal focused yoga class. Don't feel like you're alienated or excluded just because you're pregnant. Go, try it out. Just be sure to keep those modifications in mind. Always talk to your teacher and your doctor first. Make sure that you're doing what's right for you and your baby. And I hope you enjoy your practice. Namaste.